So it kinda became like a tradition here on this channel to bring up the latest Anthem status report. I think I'm becoming more like that nurse that checks on random patients every now and then to see who is still breathing and who has fallen into a deep coma. Honestly, I believe that is exactly what I'm doing right now with this game, because that is how Anthem is right now. It's barely hanging by its last thread of life, which is basically EA Play, planned for next month, but that is still 2 weeks away, and until then we have the month of May, which was supposed to have the Cataclysm event, but you probably already know how that is going to end. Anthem's official website still advertises the event as coming up this month, but at this point I believe it's still there because nobody has bothered updating the website, so obviously that one has been delayed as well. So whatever you're reading on the roadmap or website, well, it's not true. It's going to be fully delayed even for this month. It's not just the game feeling abandoned though, but also its official channels, including of course the website and their Twitter accounts. And speaking of Twitter accounts, Anthem's official account last posted anything Anthem related exactly 1 month ago on April 23rd when update 1.1 was going live. So yeah, it was a long time since then. Outside of course of a few hotfixes here and there and maybe a couple of downtimes, it's been complete silence on every single one of BioWare's official channels. Even the people working at the company don't even tweet about it, so you can imagine how the game is right now. In all honesty, Anthem's situation is so weird. On one hand, nobody at BioWare even wants to talk about this game, at least not publicly, but on the other hand, it's going to be at EA's biggest event of this year, or one of the biggest events of this year, which is EA Play, which by the way, it was officially confirmed yesterday that Anthem is going to be a presence over there, and not just any presence, it's going to be the second on that list, and it's all going to happen on June 8th. So all of the events, all of the live streams, and all of the new presentations and updates will be done on the 8th, so I'm really curious how much they can fit into that amount of time, but you know, I don't really care. I just want to see something new in this game. I don't even know at this point if anyone at BioWare even bothers to at least retweet that tweet. At the time of making this video, nobody did, which is insane if you think about it. But moving on to some actual stats, it's looking quite bad, and I have some numbers for you guys. There might even be less than 10,000 active players left in this game as we speak, and not on just one single platform, but on all of them combined. And I even have some numbers we can run here to determine this exact number that I came up with. First of all, of course, to nobody's surprise, Anthem dropped from the Xbox top 50 most played games of this month. This was honestly expected, as it was already almost dead last month, so it comes to nobody's surprise that this is happening. It was just a matter of time until it did. Interestingly enough, Fallout 76 at the time of making this video is roughly in the middle of the list, and it seems to be staying there with not as much as a drop-off, which I find surprising because both of these games were in similarly bad positions when they were released, or at the very least, fan anger around them was comparable to some extent. But you know, that game has now more players than Anthem probably ever will from now on. I don't think Anthem has been in the middle of the Xbox top 50 list for probably over 2 months now, just to put things into perspective. But moving on at the second point, while the list doesn't show how many current players each game has, which would be cool but it doesn't, it does feature Battlefield 1 on the very last spot. Now why would Battlefield 1 be so important for our calculations, you might ask? Well, the answer comes in the form of a very helpful website called battlefield1stats.com, which shows the full number of current players on all of the available platforms for this game. And because of it, we can then estimate how many players Anthem has on its own. At the time of making this video, Battlefield 1 is reported to have almost 5,000 players on the PC version and Xbox One version respectively, and more than 6,000 on the PS4. This is, mind you, very close to the 24-hour peak, which means that at its best, this game has roughly 20,000 players playing at these hours. Now comparing this to Anthem and taking into account the fact that Anthem is actually several positions lower than Battlefield 1, we can expect similar but also lower numbers. So my estimates for Anthem are between 10 to 15,000 players at peak, and this of course on all of the platforms and at its best. At its worst, it would probably drop quite significantly, probably even under 10,000 players mark, which is something that even Battlefield 1 is doing in its non-peak hours. Adding to this the fact that there's 3 platforms with no crossplay between them, several regions for each that further splits the players even more, and at any given time you might very well only have a few hundred players in your region that you can potentially group up with. That is probably the reason why there's almost nobody in any of the missions and strongholds and even free play, because your chance to be grouped with somebody has reached a critical low from which it's very hard to climb back. Now I will admit that these are some really bootleg statistics that we're doing here, so don't take them as a given, do have your doubts, but even if the game ran the same numbers as Battlefield 1, 20,000 at peak from a few millions we had in the beginning, definitely doesn't go well with neither EA nor BioWare, even more so barely 3 months after release. So you can only imagine how Anthem is doing right now, because that doesn't sound great at all. This very low number raises another problem, which is also a big flaw for this type of game, and that is of course the fact that a major part of the game becomes unplayable as a result of the fact that groups cannot be formed, which means content cannot be completed. A lot of Anthem's endgame content was designed with multiplayer in mind, and when it worked, it was pretty brilliant. I mean, it was fun. We had a lot of fun as groups in the beginning, few weeks when the game just started. Since then a lot has changed, and even more so a lot of people have abandoned it. That old saying, strong alone and stronger together, was not just a strength for this game but also a weakness, because if there's nobody to group up with, then there's almost no way to complete any meaningful content alone. So unless you want to spend your time from now on meaningless open world events, or by drastically bringing down that difficulty setting even more, then Grandmaster 2 and even more so Grandmaster 3 is going to be pretty much inaccessible for you. If you're a fresh player, and yes, those still exist, or happen to have not yet fully geared yourself, then you might still be in luck, because Grandmaster 1 is still being done and some of the dungeons are still being done on that difficulty by most of the players, though even that mostly is still done in Heart of Rage, and in no time even that will become abandoned at this rate. But once you reach 700 plus power level, when you will want to move towards Grandmaster 2 and upwards, the game abruptly ends for you, because you no longer have any hope to group up with anybody or even get a full party to complete all of that content that you will want to do in order to get geared to progress even further into content that will then be fully abandoned. So yeah, by all means, Anthem is on its last thread right now. It's not really going that great. I can only describe its situation and BioWare's situation in the end as being abnormal, even by standards of a game that would otherwise get abandoned. The game feels and looks very much abandoned by both players and developers at the current time, yet it's going to be part of one of the biggest gaming events of this year, which is so strange when you think about it. The reason I even say that this situation isn't normal is because through all of this, BioWare didn't even promote the very fact that their game is going to have a big event next month. They might be doing that maybe after this video goes live, or maybe closer to June 8th when it's supposed to happen. Maybe they have a plan, but up until now there's so much silence and ignoring from their part. It makes it feel like neither the company nor the publisher even want to even keep Anthem anymore, but they are forced to do so because they have already spent a ton of money and time into it. I'm probably not the only one who thinks this, but Anthem feels like it's being treated by both EA and BioWare like a bad child that, even though he is going to make it at the Christmas party, he's mostly going to be kept in the back so he doesn't do anything stupid. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who thinks that. It's like the whole game's presence over there is both important and unimportant at the same time. Anthem so far only got one tweet, and even that, it was made by EA, not by BioWare. Probably they will just retweet it and be done with it, as they did so many times in the past. So if you think about it for even a second, Anthem doesn't even feel like a live service anymore, or at the very least it's not doing its live service part. Live service would imply constant updates, even if they're not in-game. They can be both in-game with new content and fixes, or from developers themselves on what they're currently working upon. But this game has neither of those, so it's kinda not even a live service game, but it's neither a single player game, which is Ironic, because that is exactly what it's becoming. You're essentially playing solo right now, unless you're super lucky to find somebody to play with. It's no wonder so many people call it abandoned, even if it's the company reassuring them that there's going to be updates, that there's going to be a ton of stuff coming up, that they're still working on it, even EA Play presentation. But the way it's currently done right now, it definitely casts a lot of doubts, and I don't blame anyone who thinks that. But you know, this has been the latest updates, or lack of them thereof. This has been Anthem's third month status report, and I'm afraid it's even worse than the previous one I made a few weeks back. So yeah, tell me now, how many days, weeks or months has it been since you last logged in this game, even for 5 minutes? It doesn't matter for how long you stayed in the game or what you did, just tell me how much time has it passed since you last logged in. Comment down below, and in the meantime, a thumbs up and a subscribe would be super appreciated, and I will see you guys next time, so peace out.